So I'm working on my Confidette Bolero, and I just went upstairs to try it on and was like, oh, it's quite long. Yeah, I've knitted too long. I do have a like the length that it is now. I think I did like 3 or 4 more decreases than I was meant to. Yeah, length check. It's a good idea to try on your work at this point. Work additional rows to desired length as needed, keeping in mind that the border will add 3 centimetres. Okay, so I want to rip back 3 centimetres because I like this. If it ends up this length, I'll be very happy. So if the border is 3 centimetres wide, that conveniently takes me back to where I joined in my new ball of wool. So I'm going to sit here and rip this back. Now I'm really bad at doing it this way, but let's try it, shall we? No, already I hate it. Oh, hello, puppy. Hello. He knew. He sees the knitting and he knows. Hello. Hi. Yeah. Come on. People like it when you're in the videos.
Gotta monetize you.
You're a content dog now. You've got to earn your keep. Sorry for the racket in the background. They're moving the sheep. Actually, I don't know what they're doing with the sheep. They're not normally this noisy anyway. I removed both markers and it turned out I should only have removed one. So I'm just going to sort of tie it in. I'm about to do the border now. And I've read ahead in the instructions and I'm like, oh God, I don't feel well enough to do that today. So I might have to come back to this. I've got to make decisions about doing it jogless or not. And it's like, make a swatch. Like, oh God, okay. I was just hoping to sit here and knit stocking stitch today, but never mind. Okay. And then there's the start of the round. And this is what's confusing me, is that I'm going to be knitting in the round. I'm confused by that. I need to read these instructions again. I might have to see if I can get the screen reader on my phone to work. Okay, I have mentioned this before, but I occasionally use a screen reader when I'm particularly foggy to try and help. Process information. It doesn't always work, but this is one of my frustrations with knitting patterns and accessibility.
M1BL, P to marker, M1BL, SM, SM, P1, SM, M1BL, P2. End of round. Change to MC and work next to RNDS. Knit border round, K to end of round. Pearl border INCR round.
Doesn't really help, does it? So I don't really know what I'm going to do. After a lot of frustration, finally read the note that was like, oh yeah, you can also just like do it flat if you want. Yeah, I do want, I think, let's just do it flat and do a little seam. Really not that bothered. So, but I have to do all the picking up stitches in white. 1, 2, 3. We got some new patio furniture. Not that you can see it, but I'm here to talk to you for Stashbusting. I've made very good progress on. It doesn't look like much here, but this is the Confidette Bolero. And I'm at the point now where I had to rip back, I made it too long. Because this is a modern pattern and it's one of those which is like multi-size. Brilliant, we love to see it. I'm all for size inclusion. As somebody who is used to very brief vintage knitting pattern instructions and who has like reading and information processing issues, it's a lot of numbers and it's really easy to get things wrong. So I had to rip back. It is what it is. Anyway, I'm now at the point of picking up the stitches for the band around the neck, around the bottom. And I've done it once already and I've had to rip that back as well. It's not that I did it wrong. It's just, and it's not that the instructions weren't clear. They had a lot of information, which I'm sure is great for most people. But for me, I found it a little overwhelming. So I did it and it looked terrible. And I was like, what? I was so disappointed because I thought this is gonna, because you pick up the stitches in the contrast yarn. There's no hiding any mistakes. And I was like, this looks dire. It looks so bad. And I can't move past this. This is like a deal breaker for me in terms of this garment. If this looks bad, I'm not going to wear it. So I thought to myself, I need to rip this out and make a decision about what I'm going to do. I have since made a decision about what to do. Well, I'm halfway through it, so that's why I turned the camera on to explain this. This is a really long, rambly bit, I'm sorry. The issue for me is that you start the contrast colour with the body of the bolero still on the needle, so you just change colour. You knit to where the side seam is, and then you change colour from there, and then there's a whole load of things about jogless knitting in the round, knitting garter stitch in the round, and all the, you know, Tash gives you all these options for ways to make it look however you want to make it look. Brilliant. However, this is stocking stitch. So you change to garter stitch and then you pick up stitches along around the neckline, supposedly in the contrast yarn, and then start doing garter stitch. Now there are two issues with that for me, which is that my selvage edges are not very good in terms of tension. Do you need to come and sit down?
No, I just need to get my phone. Sorry.
I was like, are you stood there needing a wee or something?
Yeah, I'm just waiting for you to watch me.
Oh. God, that's only on a Thursday.
Even on God's Day.
Not on God's Day, absolutely not. We've got important atheist shit to do, dear.
Oh, yeah. Burning down the patriarchy.
Yeah. Where did I get to? So you pick up the stitches along...
Sorry.
It's okay. The stockinette edge. My salvages are not good. They've never been good. I don't know what it is about. It's something to do with my knitting technique. I get a very tight selvage at the far side and a very loose one at the near side. And so picking up stitches along selvage edges for me is always a bit like, okay. It's much better for me to knit a button band and stitch it on in the vintage way. So whenever I do this, I just have to kind of accept that it's going to be not perfect. However, doing it in a contrast yarn made it so obvious. It was so bad. It looked so bad. There was that aspect of it. There's also then the aspect of it that garter stitches are a lot wider than stocking stitch stitches. Garter stitches are like sort of squarer. And so my tension was massively different, massively different. And okay, that combined with the naff picked up stitches edge, with the contrast colours and the difference in tension, it was just bad. It was just really bad. So what have I done to fix this? Well, I have used, what are these needles? I think these are 3.75. I've used 3mm needles. So I've used a separate circular needle to pick up the stitches along the neckline edge, and I've done it with a little bit of green, of the coordinating colour. So I'm gonna start with the white, where I was supposed to start, and knit in the round as I was, but I'm going to knit it over two circular needles that are different sizes, so that I'm going to get different gauges along the bottom and along the neck. I think that will work fine. I think it will look better transitioning from the green to have a row of green there just for me and my tension issues. I think I'm going to have solved my problems, but it's like hundreds of stitches now on the needle, so completing several rounds to see how it looks. Probably should have done a swatch, shouldn't I? Oh well. Let's give it a go. It's not finished yet, it needs some ends weaving in, and I need to decide on buttons. But I have finally finished the sewing up. absolutely love it. If anything, it's ended up a touch big, but I'm telling myself it was a cardigan as part of a twin set, and there's a part of me that's really tempted to knit the matching jumper. And I was so nervous about having done the machine knit button band. Like, my ends and stuff are not great, and the buttonholes are not great. However, this sort of V-neck cardigan I would always wear done up, so hopefully nobody's gonna be looking at my buttonholes. But I'm just, yeah, it's so perfectly of this era, and it's so British. I think there's such a distinction. I remember I had this once when I went to a vintage fair, when I wore original vintage every day. Somewhere, a posh bit of Surrey somewhere this was. And I was looking for jackets specifically, and the lady got out a load to show me, and they were all sort of like glamorous and evening jackets, and I was like, I'm sorry, they're just not quite right for my wardrobe. And she went, oh, too American. And I was like, hang on a minute. But yeah, they were too American. I don't want to look like a glamorous American film star or Hollywood star all of the time in my vintage wardrobe. I want to look more like a land girl on the home front. And this fits the bill. Do you know what I mean? It's so impactful. And I don't think as well it looks hideously... I don't think it looks hideously anything. But it doesn't scream vintage, you know, it could be modern. I think if it were like oversized and baggy, I've seen a lot that use this kind of very traditional pattern. Are we gonna get 2 works in progress finished in this video? That would be cool. But yeah, deciding on the buttons. I feel like I want something quite neutral. I feel like I want a beige or sort of this sort of brown. It's not very thick button band, so I probably don't even need a shank button. Crossover comes quite high up, doesn't it? The yarn for this has already been counted off the stash total, so it's not like it's going down. It's just nice to have a finished object, isn't it? And a new cardigan in my wardrobe. Perfect for summer as well. It's so lightweight. So, the Best Way cardigan. All it needs now is buttons, and I've been putting this off for the longest time, partly because the buttons I had here were uninspiring. So I've been back to my parents' house to collect my stash of vintage buttons. I have some gorgeous, gorgeous vintage buttons. Let's find some good ones. I mean... yeah, right? Cute. Wrong shade of green. I have these sort of great buttons. They're a better match for the shade of green. Not perfect though. And also probably too big. Yeah, too big to go through some of the buttonholes, the smaller of the buttonholes. But also too heavy, I think, for this cardigan. So I have these red glass ones. They could be very nice, couldn't they? I'm not convinced. Ideally, I think what I would actually like is something like that. But I've only got 3 of those. Something like this, like shell-like. I've also got like the wood coconutty ones. Those are an option. Do I not have anything yellow? I mean, only 2. These are cool. I like those. Wrong shade of red and too big. Those are fun. They're the wrong shade of green. Let's see what we think. I'm not discounting these. This is option 1. You may be able to see there's slightly different colours. There's 2 different, slightly different colours. So I have 4 of the darker ones. So I could either do it that way or do it... no. Just have one in the middle. I think I prefer it the other way around. So that they sort of alternate. So I could do that. This is option 1. This would be option 2. These have come off a cardigan. not one of mine, but they're sewn on with like mending wool. So that's okay. I don't hate that. Do I want to cut these off the card? If I'm honest, I feel like these are a bit kitschy. For what's already quite a bold cardigan, I feel like these would be better on a plain red cardigan that needs a bit of interest. Also, I thought these were glass and I think they're plastic. Anyway, I think my favourite is this option. Do these fit through my smaller buttonholes? Just, yeah. Okay, I think this is what I'm going to do. I like that they're not as impactful. I think these are too dark. I think if I had all of them this colour, I think I would have been this, but I think the dark is too much contrast. I think this is the winner. You'll forgive me if I'm not the most enthusiastic, but I really am not feeling myself today. But I have just finished trimming all the ends on my Confidette Bolero, and so I wanted to talk about it. I really like it. I really like it. So let me see if I've got the strands to put it on. Oh. Obviously it doesn't really go with the outfit, but it's cute, right? So much better, so much more wearable, so much more comfortable than that ski jumper I made. As fun as that was to knit, this is much more practical. There's a bit of a colour discrepancy somewhere in the torso. I'm not really sure what happened there because obviously this was all the same dye lot of yarn because I bought it all and knitted it up into a sweater, so I can only imagine that like it got washed or where I dried it or whatever, it faded a little bit, and that's why this one section, small section, is a slightly different colour. It's not the end of the world. I don't think it's that noticeable. It's just when it was blocking in the sunshine, I was like, huh, there's a stripe there. The whole thing is made out of odds and ends, so because of the nature of that, because of the nature of the stripes in that ski jumper, I had to cut the yarn a lot to do the stripes. So yeah, it's a bit, I had lots of odds and ends. Had I known and avoided that, great, I'm not that bothered. I'm really not that bothered. The other thing I've noticed is that I think I need to start doing a different size sleeve to torso, particularly if I'm doing this seamless set-in sleeve construction. As it is, I know this about myself, you can probably see it here, even with the shirt underneath. I'm quite broad, but I have quite a rounded shoulder, and so I find like set-in sleeves on knitwear, seamless set-in sleeves on knitwear, they don't have enough room through the sleeve cap here for me. I end up with my arm sort of pinned down like this because there's not quite enough movement. It's not the end of the world because obviously knitting's stretchy, but it's something that I notice, and I normally make my usual sleeve size and just put in a few extra increases here because that's what I don't necessarily need the width all the way down the sleeve. I just need it here just for this little moment, so like there's a bit of extra over the roll of my shoulder. But I do feel I would be more comfortable if these sleeves were a bit looser. You can kind of just see that they're a bit tight. I don't want to feel like a sausage, and I feel a bit sausagey. Possibly one of those things, I could have blocked it a bit more aggressively. I literally just washed it and laid it out to dry because this yarn had already been steamed and stuff. The blocking was mostly to get the stitches to lie flatter, because some of the yarn, when I reclaimed it, I steamed it, and some I didn't. I just wound it up so it was all ramen-y. So that was sort of why I wanted to properly wet block it, just to make the yarn relax. I think if I were to, pin it out, and I'd get more room. Anyway, it's all stuff that's all manageable, all livable, and a much better use of this yarn than that ski sweater that had sat in the drawer. Contemplating making another one of these because I like it so much, Or certainly it's made me realise that I don't tend to do a lot of 1950s vintage stuff anymore. It's too, I think I've talked about this before, it's just a little too femme for me. That being said, really suits my body type. So it's a tricky one for me to balance, because I know if I make a 1950s cropped bolero, I'm gonna love the way it looks on me and I'm gonna enjoy wearing it. It's just about how the disconnect. So it was a bad day to have a profound discussion about clothing as self-expression and gender identity and politics, but here we are, we're doing it. There's something about very hyper-femme 1950s stuff that, as much as it suits my body type, doesn't feel right on me. And so finding a way to incorporate the style lines and the silhouettes of that era and maintain my personal style, if you like, my personal identity and expression, is something that I'm continuously exploring. And I think this might be a good candidate that ticks all the boxes. This pattern, I mean, this bolero pattern. So there's a part of me that's like, do I make some that are a bit more neutral? Do I make some that are a bit more bold? Anyway, I'm really looking forward to wearing this one. It looks good on, it just doesn't feel necessarily quite as me as like the Best Way lace one. In terms of stash busting, I just weighed this and it weighs 300 grams. That means 6 balls of wool off the total. Oh my god, what was the total? It was like 99.5. I'm gonna have to look it up. 99.5. So 99.5 take 6, 93.5. However, I've watched back as well this afternoon my stash busting count up, and I totaled the yarn from this ski project as 10 balls of wool, but when I just checked the receipt from when I ordered it, I ordered 12. So I'm not entirely sure where 2 balls of wool have gone, and I don't know whether it's just waste, odds and ends. I don't know as well whether I had to make loads of these little buttons for the ski jumper. Oh, do you reckon I could incorporate them on here? That way, maybe? Sew them on? They're still a little nipply, aren't they? I don't know what I'll do with them. So it might be that might be work, but I don't think they would have taken 100 grams of wool to knit those buttons. I don't know, but it's weird that I'm 6 balls of wool short. No, not 6. What did I say? 2. 100 grams of wool short. I'm not complaining, but I like this yarn. So if it is somewhere, I'd want to use it. As for, I mean, they're all behind you, so I'm not going to like try and reach for all of them, but I have so many little bits left, like this still. Like this. Oh, I've got tracking on, that's why. I don't really know what I'm going to do with them. They lend themselves to a stripy project quite nicely. I'll just have to be quite careful of what I choose because I haven't got a massive amount of everything left. Somebody on one of my previous stash busting videos, when I talked about doing some knits for babies, Woody's ringing me, hang on. Okay, we're back, and this time I'm in my ergonomic chair. So having watched back that last clip and seen my like hunched, curled posture, I thought this might be better. Oh, and you won't believe this, Woody's literally just pulled up outside the house. He's supposed to be at work. Why is this man not wanting me to do my job? So, as I was saying, before I was rudely interrupted again, I talked previously about the fact that I've got a lot of people in my life currently having babies. It's just the time of my life. I'm in my 30s now. It seems to be par for the course. And I like to hand knit gifts for babies. I know it's very traditional and stuff, but the baby doesn't appreciate it. But the parents do. It seems to be like a really nice gesture of like welcoming your little one to the world with this cute fluffy thing I made for them. So when I mentioned that, somebody commented and said, you need Elizabeth Zimmerman's surprise jacket pattern And I looked it up because I don't know a lot about Elizabeth Zimmerman, apart from she was a pioneer of a lot of the knitting from the top techniques. Very influential in terms of 20th century knitting evolution. This pattern on Ravelry, it had something like, I can't even remember, thousands and thousands of projects. And it does look like it's a good candidate for using up some scrap yarn. And I'm thinking a green and white colour scheme from the leftovers of this yarn, and because this is a wool cotton blend, it's very wearable and washable. That could be quite a good option for some baby knits. However, in terms of videos and stash busting, I've got all these babies to knit for and I'm prioritising that. And so some of the things that I'm making, I've either acquired acrylic via my mum's stash, or I've bought new yarn and things just for the sake of having a nice gift to give to somebody. Obviously, I made those baby hats last episode from some things in my stash. But I think if you're knitting for a baby, that's quite a different thing. So I think I want to make a dedicated video for all those projects and talk through my decisions, specifically in the context of this is a gift for a baby, or rather it's a gift for new parents. The baby doesn't know what's going on, do they? So I might be doing a few scrap projects from my stash, but my kind of the next few items in my knitting queue are not stash busting related, which feels really exciting because I mean 93.5, I think that's the lowest the stash has ever been. And if I can get a few scrap yarn projects finished with these baby knits, that would be really satisfying. I've still got some projects for me that I want to cast on. I think I talked about this in the count up. I've got some sort of things in mind. I've got some Fable knitwear knits. I've got a shawl using the yarn that Woody's friend bought me from Gotland that I have kind of plans in my head. But if I'm honest, I've done two or three cardigans back to back now in terms of knitting projects. There's been some other things sprinkled in, but don't really need any more cardigans for myself currently. My knitwear drawer is overflowing. So I think I'm going to pivot and do a little bit of gift knitting for a while. And if I'm able to use up some scrap yarn and do a bit of stash busting as part of that, that's brilliant. But that's not going to be my focus. My focus is not necessarily use up this yarn by any means possible. I'm thinking about the best, most thoughtful, most appropriate gifts for friends and family having babies. So, an exciting new chapter. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Stash Busting. I hope you like my finished cardigans, both this one and the Best Way one. And we'll have to see how low we can get this stash before I buy new yarn. Thanks for watching. See you next time. This garden's a haven for slugs, and I've tried everything basically to stop them eating my plants, and I saw a thing online about beer traps and I've tried that. Let's put it this way, it's successful.